Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? The member for Clark.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, many welcomed the British government's decision to suspend 30 arms export licences to Israel, coming as it did after a review finding a clear risk that the arms could be used by Israel in serious violations of international humanitarian law in Gaza. In doing so, Britain joined Italy, Spain, Canada, Belgium and the Netherlands in restricting arms sales to Israel. But it's no wonder many are left asking what the Australian government is doing in regards to Australia's arms trade with Israel, because it's clear we are witnessing one of the most appalling humanitarian catastrophes of our lifetime. Deputy Speaker, while I of course acknowledge the horror of 7 October and the right of all nations to self-defence, we can't deny what's before us now, and that is that Israel remains engaged in an international and systemic military campaign against the people of Palestine, an action which both the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice are investigating as a likely breach of international laws and indeed constituting genocide. Of course, the government's answer to questions about the weapons trade is that Australia has not provided weapons to Israel in 5 years. While this may be technically correct, it is a bit of a fudge. There are currently multiple active military export permits in place, including for goods or parts already in use by the ADF being sent to Israel for repair and return, as well as the export of dual-use goods and weapons parts and components. And many have no doubt also heard that Australia is a manufacturer for a key component in the F-35 jets, which, due to the global nature of the supply chain, do end up in Israeli jets. Deputy Speaker, I understand that global supply chains complicate the picture, and I understand that renegotiating or abandoning long-established contracts could be disruptive and costly. For instance, re-specifying components for the Redback vehicle currently in production for the Army would no doubt delay and blow out the cost of that project. Moreover, the practical and legal implications of withdrawing from the global supply chain would be to jeopardise our own F-35 capability. But that doesn't mean the government shouldn't try to extricate Australia as far as possible. And of course, the very least the Australian government should do is to set a clear marker that from this point on, Australia will engage no further in trading arms, components or other materiel support with the Israeli Defence Forces until we can be sure it would not be used to commit a genocide. To do anything less, Deputy Speaker, is to fail our legal and moral responsibility to Palestinians and to the international community. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Parramatta.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Last weekend, I had the pleasure of attending the Moon Festival celebration program. It was an absolute honour to present awards to the winners of the 2024 Global Chinese Recitation Competition and participate in the Lantern Showcase. I was amazed by the creativity and craftsmanship of the students. Like Victor, who showed me his impressive dragon-shaped lantern, which he made over the course of 2 weeks with the help of his mum. Many other children creatively recycled materials from their homes using plastic bottles, cardboard boxes and even disposable chopsticks to make their lanterns. Afterwards, the students, dressed in traditional Chinese clothing, proudly paraded around their handmade lanterns before their teachers and friends. Their pride was unmistakable. For the kids, making these lanterns was more than just celebrating the Mid-Autumn Festival. It meant spending time and making special memories with their families and friends. Speaker, these students are so bright and talented. I'm incredibly proud to see them grow up in Australia, celebrating their heritage and traditions. This is the true beauty of our multicultural community, and I look forward to seeing how these young minds will contribute to their country's future. This wonderful event was organised by Fenghua, a local Chinese language school in Epping. Since 1998, Fenghua has promoted the learning of the Chinese language in our community. And under the leadership of Principal Xu, Fenghua continues to foster a deep appreciation of Chinese culture for generations of children and families. I want to extend my sincere thanks to Fung Hua for such a wonderful weekend. The smiles on the faces of the children and parents are a testament to the success of this event. It's the best feedback any educator can receive, and I'm proud to support such a wonderful community event.
Thank you. The member for Latrobe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to celebrate a very, very remarkable individual whose dedication and advocacy have made and will make a profound impact of young lives battling eating disorders. It is an honour to congratulate Mr Rob Evans, a constituent and fearless advocate for the better health outcomes for our youth. Rob has worked tirelessly alongside Alfred Health to secure an impressive $6.5 million in state government funding for an in-home intensive eating disorder early treatment program, something Rob has been so passionate about. This initiative is a game changer, providing tailored support for young people, reducing hospital admissions and offering much needed in-home care. And that's what Rob has pointed out to me over the years. In August, Rob launched the first co-design workshop with Alfred Health, marking an exciting step forward in this journey. This is a testament to Rob's commitment to involving the community experts in creating effective solutions for young people suffering with eating disorders. Rob's advocacy, though, is, as you can imagine, deeply personal. It's in memory of his daughter, Liv, who tragically lost her battle with anorexia. And as Rob told me, it was a battle with her mind, and eventually, sadly, she lost. And he's dedicated his time to make sure other families don't go through his incredible grief. His courage and unwavering dedication to improving the lives and health outcomes of other young people is truly admirable, and he just is a tirelessly hard-working champion for this cause. Rob, your efforts have not been unnoticed. Your work is a beacon of hope for many families and individuals struggling with eating disorders. And I also note the member for Fisher, who's been very passionate about this and also has met with Rob Evans. And as Rob said to me, and this is the key message for parents and friends, that sometimes those comments made to, and it's mainly young girls, which could be a throwaway comment, which is a comment which they just can't get out on their head, and it could be, as we call, body shaming. So I just encourage all young people and even parents and friends be so careful with words, because words, once they're stuck in the young mind, they can't leave and they become like an evil just floating around in their brains and they can't get out. But this program, though, and this is what Rob has said to me, if his daughter had the opportunity to get the support at home, he believes things could have been much different. So again, Rob, we thank you very much for the work you've done. You're an absolute champion. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Bendigo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, this week we acknowledged National TAFE Day, an opportunity for us to come together to celebrate vocational education and training, and in particular TAFE and our TAFE teachers. Prior to coming up here to Canberra on Friday, I did meet with some of my local TAFE teachers to discuss not just this day and the importance of this day, but what's happening at Bendigo TAFE. And Deputy Speaker, I was shocked to learn that it's been over 2 years since our TAFE teachers in Victoria have received an adequate pay rise. They did receive a bit of a pay adjustment of about 2%, but they've been in bargaining for a long time. And yet, whilst we're in this cost of living crisis, whilst people on the award and in other EAs are receiving generous pay rises, our TAFE teachers have gone without. It is disappointing because we do need highly qualified, skilled and well-paid TAFE teachers to ensure that our TAFE students have the support that they need, have the teachers that they need. If we are going to address the skills crisis in this country, then we need well-paid, well-supported TAFE teachers. I want to thank my local TAFE teachers for the generosity and the spirit in which they shared their experiences. I also had an opportunity over the 2-week break to attend a forum that was held at Bendigo Latrobe, organised by the Australian Conservation Foundation, the local chapter in Bendigo and Castlemaine, BirdLife Australia and BirdLife Castlemaine, as well as a number of local environmental activist groups, including a Bat Alliance, who are very concerned about what is happening to our flying foxes in our region. The event was well attended. It was packed out, and they actually had to close registration. And everybody there was there with a common interest. How do we better protect and preserve our natural environment? They did care about having stronger environmental laws, and there was a recognition that the environmental laws in this country are broken for both business and for the environment. There was a strong sense that we needed to be doing more, not just to protect and have the laws in place, but to support landcare groups with the restoration work that they are doing on the ground. There was a recognition that in areas like my area, we need local, state and federal government to work better together, to work with local landholders as well as local environmental groups to restore precious habitat. Deputy Speaker, in my part of the world, we are rebuilding from 150 years of mining legacy. So there's a recognition as well that we need to work with our First Nations community, in particular Jara, to restore country to what it was prior to the Gold Rush era. I'd like to thank everybody for their contribution on this day.
Thank you. The member for Fisher.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week I was honoured to host the 7th Annual Fisher Community Awards, celebrating local champions whose stories so often go untold. Today I want their stories put on the permanent record in this place. Student of the Year was 10-year-old Nate Nelson. He was inspired by his grandfather's disability to start fundraising for disability charity Steps. He raised a whopping $15,000, and I think it was pretty safe to say that everybody in the room, all 150 odd of us, were absolutely left in awe at this young man's passion. Educator of the Year Molly Gleeson from Merredin State College has been supporting vulnerable students, particularly in middle school, for over 3 decades. Congratulations to Molly. Education Provider of the Year Steps Pathways College has led the way when it comes to life skills training to empower those with disabilities to live more independently. Carmel Crouch, you've been an absolute inspiration to the Sunshine Coast. Thank you for what you do with young people who live with disabilities, and Steps Pathways College was rightly recognised in the awards. Employee of the Year, Luke Newman from 5 Bridges, has gone above and beyond to support disengaged and disabled job seekers to find hope and a place to work. Well done, Luke. Business of the Year, Just Better Care Sunshine Coast, has offered a high quality and integrated service to senior Australians who call our region home. Innovator of the Year, Nibro, has found a unique manufacturing niche modifying vehicles and equipment for those with physical disabilities, including my youngest daughter, Sarah. Senior of the Year, Peter Sakasiris, has served for decades in many community groups, including the Alex Surf Lifesaving Club, Marucci RSL, and many more. Well done, Peter. Senior Group of the Year, Caloundra Garden Club, has connected garden lovers who, in their retirement, have found a place to connect and contribute. And Madam Deputy Speaker, if you ever wanted to have fun gardening, then the Caloundra Garden Club is the place to be, because the 2 representatives that turned up were an absolute hoot and had the room in stitches. So well done, ladies. You are clearly leading the way. Environmental Leader of the Year was given to 2 organisations this year, Take Action Pumicestone Passage and Night Eyes Water and Land Care, for their tireless efforts to promote the Pumicestone and protect the Pumicestone Passage. And of course the final winner, Queensland Air Museum, who celebrates 50 years of operation, won the Andrew Wallace Award for Community Group of the Year for decades of devoted commemoration, education and service to our aeronautical history.
Thank you. The member for Tangi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Australians are some of the biggest consumers of single-use plastic in the world. And plastic waste is one of the issues that my constituents in Tangi, including some of my youngest primary school students, often raise with me. Plastic pollution is also an issue that has long been close to my heart. When I was a dolphin trainer
one of my dolphin friends, Ting Loy, died. And when we cut open his belly, we saw that it was full of plastic bags, not fish, but plastic bags. We know that we need to find a new way to make and use plastic. We need to find a way to end plastic waste. Last week, I attended the launch of the new $8 million Bioplastic Innovation Hub at Murdoch University in Tangney. Murdoch and CSIRO, Australian National Science Agency, will work with industry partners to develop a new generation of 100% compostable plastics. Based at Murdoch University, the hub aims to revolutionize plastic packaging. Bioplastic currently make up of just 1% of the market, and more people around the world become concerned about plastic waste. The demand for innovative solutions grows. Consumers and businesses are asking for more sustainable products of plastic. This facility will develop plastics that can break down in compost, land, or water. It brings together experts to help translate cutting-edge bioplastic research into real-world applications. At the launch, I met with some of the PhD students and scientists involved in this development. They show me some of the work they are doing to develop new 100% compostable packaging, bottles, cap, wrappers, films, and that will all be able to be fully break down. I was also so inspired to see some of our brightest minds tackling the war on waste. The facility's first industry partner is WA Ecofar Biotechnology, who are focused on turning food waste into compostable water bottles. The hub will help meet the government goal of reducing the total waste generated in Australia by 10% per person by 2030. With this facility, Tangney and Western Australia are at the forefront of developing the next generation of sustainable plastics. And with growing global demand, Tangney and WA will be also at the forefront of the skills and jobs that are part of this new industry, helping us deliver a future made in Australia.
The member for McPherson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Earlier this month, I had the absolute privilege of meeting with an 11-year-old boy who lives in my electorate. His name's Dexter Welsh, and he has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. He came into my office with his mother to tell me not only what his story was, but what they would like us to do as parliamentarians to support those who are living with type 1 diabetes. So let me start by talking a little bit about Dexter's story. It is actually described in quite a lot of detail on the Diabetes Australia website, and I would encourage everyone to go and have a look at that website and read some of the stories that are there. But for Dexter, what he says is that one particular Sunday, he had a really good thick shake with ice cream and all the toppings. But then he pretty much passed out on the couch. That night, his parents noticed that he had lost a lot of weight, and they started to reflect on just how much water he had been drinking. So they took him to the local GP the next day. The GP did some tests. He did a two-finger test, but really couldn't get a number, so they were sent to the emergency department at Tweed Hospital, and it was there that he was diagnosed. His blood glucose level was sitting at about 44. His ketones were high, and effectively he was in ketoacidosis. It was so difficult, he tells me, for the doctors to be able to get even a line into his veins because of how much weight he had lost. But since his diagnosis, he has been able to access a pump that delivers the correct dosage that he needs. so he's not having to inject himself every single day. He's living a very full life, and to be honest, when he came into my electorate office, he looked particularly well and healthy, and it was hard to imagine the struggle that he had gone through because he's coping so well. But he and his mother are now effectively on a mission to make sure that they raise awareness of type 1 diabetes, the effects particularly on young people, and to talk to local members of Parliament about some of the costs that are associated with a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. So in my electorate of Macpherson, there are currently about 750 people who are living with type 1 diabetes, but it's also estimated that there's more than 150 people living in Macpherson who are yet to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So they are effectively living with it, but have not been diagnosed. The financial burden is significant, and in my electorate alone is roughly about $18.4 million annually. What Dexter is calling for is much more support, and I support his call.
Thank you. The member for Newcastle.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, last month in Parliament I raised an important issue for the people of Wallsend and surrounding suburbs regarding their postal services. Long queues and customer wait times at Wallsend Post Office were getting worse, and the lack of adequate resourcing had become completely unacceptable to the community. Residents said they were waiting over half an hour to be served, and some were being turned away because Australia Post staff didn't have time or capacity to respond to increased customer needs. Well, I'd like to update the House with some good news. Australia Post has taken the concerns of the Wallsend community seriously and recently onboarded a new part-time team member at the Wallsend Post Office to specifically assist with the receipt of and delivery of parcel items behind the counter each afternoon. I've also received advice that the parcel lockers will be installed at Wallsend Village Shopping Centre as an additional measure to assist in alleviating the waiting times that locals have reported. I look forward to updating the Wallsend community of their progress. This is a great win for Wallsend. Wallsend Post Office services a large area, including the rapidly growing suburbs of Maryland, Fletcher and Minmi. Increased customer and community needs demanded additional investment in the workforce and postal services in the area. And I thank the Australia Post for their positive response. Postal services are essential services. They provide access to important community services and connect communities across the nation and the globe. I look forward to working with Australia Post and the people of Wallsend and surrounds to ensure that services at Wallsend Post Office meet community needs and expectations. And today, I rise in Parliament to celebrate the achievements of Team Newcastle, who competed in the Paris Paralympians. We had such a stellar pool of talented Novocastrians taking part in the Games in Paris. We had Luke Bailey, who competed in the para-athletics, Lauren Parker in the wheelchair triathlon and the H14 and H13 paracycling, Reid McCracken in the para-athletics, and Aaron Royal participating as a Paralympic guide for Sam Harding. You all did Newcastle so proud. I'd like to give a special shout out and a massive congratulations to Lauren Parker, who finished with 2 golds in the para-triathlon and paracycling H14 and 1 silver in the paracycling H13. I am so grateful to represent an electorate which loves sport, but importantly, we love to celebrate our sporting champions as well. I thank the Paralympian champions. We pay tribute to your athleticism, and I look forward to following your careers and supporting your continued success.
Thank you. The member for Moncrief.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On the Gold Coast, we look after our own, and my community's generosity seems to be limitless. We have around about 12 fundraising balls a year through the winter on the Gold Coast. I've actually lost count of how many, and I'm just estimating based on how many I attend, but we have some stellar citizens who run fundraising balls on the Gold Coast to help those in need, particularly during this cost of living crisis. And on Saturday night just past, I was privileged to attend the St John's Crisis Centre fundraising ball, and witnessed the generosity of such a stellar citizen and a foundation called the James Frizzell Foundation. And I was in the room with a couple of hundred other Gold Coasters who were generously donating to St John's Crisis Centre, who help women and children fleeing from domestic violence, who help those who find themselves in that predicament of being homeless, perhaps living on the streets, living in tents in my electorate. It's very sad. Older women, the largest cohort, also on the Gold Coast, are suffering from homelessness. And I was there when it was announced that the James Frizzell Foundation would deliver $25, not thousand, million dollars to St John's Crisis Centre to build accommodation for such women fleeing domestic and family violence. And I applaud the efforts of the foundation to James Frizzell and his wife Trish for donating that to St John's Crisis Centre. And I want to thank all of the board of St John's, the President Fiona Brown, Claire Javill Onar, Mario Fairley, Travis Welsh, Raj Anand, Nicole Bricknell, Diane Eder, who was the former president, and her very supportive husband, Ed Eder, for their support of St John's Crisis Centre for so long. And also Diane Kozik, who's the general manager there, who is on my Moncrieff Community Cabinet and regularly attends meetings where we talk about how we can help those in our community who are doing it tough. I just want to highlight once again, to finish, the remarkable generosity of Gold Coasters when it comes to supporting our own through the fundraising balls that we have, but also the Vinnie's CEO Sleep Out for those who are doing it tough. We really do care about our fellow citizens, and can I thank every single person who attended that ball and all of the other balls across the Gold Coast during the winter to support those Australians struggling with this cost of living crisis. Thank you to the Gold Coast.
And I call the member for Higgins.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Chelsea, a teaching student, wrote to me last year about unpaid placements. There is a level of malpractice with not paying someone who is working within healthcare or teaching. As a student renting and experiencing rent raises, I was forced to retreat to food banks multiple times just to feed myself. There is something degrading about this experience of not being paid. It impacts your physical and mental health, leaving friends of mine burnt out before even commencing in jobs within their profession. Chelsea, of course, refers to the corrosive effects of poverty, particularly placement poverty. Well, Chelsea, paid pracs for nursing, midwifery, teaching and social work students are on their way. Paying close to $320 per week, paid pracs will benefit 68,000 uni students and over 5,000 vet students each year and go some way to helping these students complete. That's the key. We have enacted recommendations of the University Accord Report, a rigorous review designed to ensure that our universities are fit for purpose, competitive and student-centred. We are wiping $3 billion off student debt for 3 million students and pegging HECS indexation to wage growth or CPI, whichever is lower, and then backdating it to the 1st of June last year. We want to avoid that inflationary spike we encountered. For someone with an average HECS debt of about $26,500, this means that their HECS debt will be cut by around $1,200. HECS, first introduced in 1989, has helped more people attend university, but it has also changed the mix of people who attend university, including those from disadvantaged backgrounds. So while free university sounds great, it came with a trade-off. It was nowhere near as inclusive as the user pays system that we currently have. The caveat is that if you aren't certain about university, don't dabble, because debt is a risk. Instead, consider alternatives like TAFE, embraced now by over 500,000 Australians. We are creating a new student ombudsman, a watchdog in the corner of students. Why? For so many reasons, more than I can mention, like racism, anti-Semitism, sexual assault, which affects 1 in 20 students, and sexual harassment, which affects 1 in 6 students. And finally, who can forget the bread lines outside food pantries during the early days of this pandemic? They were dominated by young people, international students and domestic students. This is partly a legacy of a previous Liberal government that gutted student unions. We are mandating that higher education providers allocate at least 40% of student services and amenities fees to student-led organisations. We want to strengthen these organisations and in the best interests of students so that they can have a positive experience in universities.
Call the member for Melbourne.
Is it a gem?
In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements is concluded. Call the member for Melbourne. Member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. I move the Federation Chamber do now adjourn.
Is there a seconder? Member for Wide Bay. Now I'll call the member for Melbourne.
I present this petition, which has been considered by the Petitions Committee and found to be in order to the House. I want to thank the Refugee Action Collective in Victoria for asking me to table this petition. It draws attention to the 13,000 refugees that have been trapped in Indonesia, in some cases for over a decade, as a direct result of Australia's inhumane policies. The pathway to resettlement out of Indonesia has been totally blocked since November 24 under Scott Morrison, and even though it's Labor's policy to reverse it, they've done nothing since taking office. Refugee Action Collective have spent decades advocating for the rights of refugees. They know the community does not want the bipartisan cruelty to continue. Labor should listen, do what they said they'd do, and finally reverse this Morrison-era resettlement ban. Australian banks are some of the most profitable in the world. But with almost everyone doing it tough right now, are the banks struggling too? Suncorp Bank, they've just posted $1.2 billion yearly profit. Wouldn't exactly call that struggling. Westpac, they've bagged a $1.8 billion profit in the last 3 months alone, which has their shares at a 6-year high. What cost of living crisis? And then there's the Commonwealth Bank. They've managed to post a $9.7 billion early profit. $9.7 billion. Where do the lion's share of these billions in profits come from, you might be wondering? Property lending. So just to spell that out, these banks are raking it in off out-of-control interest rates for mortgage holders, which then leads to out-of-control rent increases for renters, fueling a cost of living and the housing crisis, all in a day's work for the big banks. And this is happening while 3.7 million households experience food insecurity, battling with where their next meal will come from. And if that makes your blood boil, you are right to be angry, because this is a national disgrace. The big banks have far too much power. The Greens are fighting tooth and nail to try and get it back for the people. In fact, at the start of this term of government, the Greens had secured million-dollar fines for dodgy bankers after the Banking Royal Commission exposed widespread cases of misconduct in the sector. But after the executives of the big banks called the Treasurer to complain, the deal was off. How convenient. I guess that the political donations that these banks make to the major parties, which we are assured aren't for buying influence, really do come in handy. And don't get me started on the salaries of these banking executives. In the 2022-23 financial year, the Westpac CEO took home $5.7 million in pay and bonuses. The NAB and ANZ CEOs both took home $6.2 million. And the Commonwealth Bank CEO made a tidy $7.3 million. This is the same year that the big four banks made a record $32 billion in profits. Is this the sort of country that we want to live in? Where families can't afford the basics, but banking CEOs can make millions of dollars a year profiting off a crisis that they are fueling? Where home ownership is completely out of reach for most common professions in Australia? If a nurse started saving for a house today, it would take them 11 years to save for a 20% housing deposit. A primary school teacher, 12 years. And unbelievably, a childcare or early education worker would have to save until 2051. That's 31 years to be able to put down a deposit. 31 years. And even if that childcare early education worker somehow managed to do the impossible, they would then have to spend 92% of their earnings on their mortgage repayments. This is the impossible task laid before everyday people, caused by a political class that puts corporate interests before the communities that they represent. The system is rigged, and we need to unrig it. We can't keep voting for the same two parties and expecting a different result. It's time to rein in the big banks and the cashed-up CEOs, the property developers, and every Liberal and Labor politician that enables them. It's time to ban the dirty donations that run our politics, buying the favour of the major parties in order to get their way. It's time to give the power back to the people who are struggling and to fix this system so that it works for the many, not the few.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Hasluck.
Deputy Speaker, the Future Made in Australia agenda addresses the major structural and strategic challenges that are facing the Australian economy. We've established a national interest framework to support the consideration and the decision-making in relation to public investment that facilitates private sector investment in the national interest. In other words, we're encouraging Australians to work together to create a better future, and the agenda is urgently needed. Australia has a rich history of manufacturing innovation. We need to have a rich future, developing sustainable products, becoming a renewable energy superpower, powering Australia with cheaper, cleaner and more reliable energy. And we need to trust and encourage the creativity and capacities of Australian industry. Our $1.7 billion Future Made in Australia Innovation Fund encourages investment in new industries, new ideas and future growth. And this is happening right now across our country. My new electorate of Hasluck now includes the town of Bassendean, a lovely place rich in heritage nestled along the Swan River about 10 kilometres from the city of Perth. The people of Bassendean believe in economic development, social advancement and sustainable solutions. And Bassendean is also home to Hoffman Engineering, one of the most impressive workplaces in Australia. Recently, I visited Hoffman Engineering with the Deputy Prime Minister. It was an excellent opportunity for him to see for himself the precision engineering of the gears used in mining and in defence, right beside the bogies that are being prepared for WA's newest trains. These gears include the world's biggest, a superbly engineered masterpiece with a diameter of 15 metres. Standing inside it was absolutely a surreal experience. And Hoffman's story is the story of our nation. Hoffman Engineering began as a small tool-making shop in a Perth backyard in 1969. Two brothers, immigrants from Germany, reckoned there was a future in high-quality gears. And today, Hoffman Engineering employs over 700 people across Australia, but they also have a presence across 5 other countries. And what's the secret of their success? Eric Hoffman, the Managing Director, believes that you can always get better at what you do. He also believes that every worker has good ideas, and that every idea deserves to be heard. Research and development are everybody's business. Workers there have been looking to the clean technology market for some time now. The company is already developing wind turbine gears and building better components for the local wind power industry, aided by a $5 million grant from the federal government. Its Hof-Wind project will produce enough green power to supply more than 200,000 homes, producing an additional 900 megawatts. The enthusiasm and commitment of the workers making this happen is enormously impressive. In a Perth suburb, which also boasts a higher percentage of artists than any other in the city, there's world-class engineering literally just walking distance away. And that's another kind of service to the community. You can see the energy that stems from the determination to produce work of the highest quality and to compete internationally. Workers at Hoffman Engineering are rightly proud of what they do. Their products are found in the mining, defence, transport, energy and manufacturing industries, as well as in agriculture.
They make mills, kilns, wind turbines, Hoffnuts, crushers and shovels, portable machine tools, cutting tools, valves and pumps, drills, food packaging, hydraulic excavators and haul trucks. It's quite extraordinary. Student engineers are offered work experience and site visits, internships, cadetships. In fact, Hoffman Engineering has a principle of 10% of their workforce must be apprentices. Young workers work beside workers from around the world who have vast experience and from all sorts of backgrounds. They learn from each other. They create the technology of the future in one of the, as I say, the biggest gear-making operation in the Southern Hemisphere. They also learn from seminars, industry development programs and the latest overseas technologies and systems. Their working days are learning and discovery days. They learn how to design, manufacture, repair and refurbish mining and industrial equipment. They work on gearing for heavy and light industries, processing equipment and tooling, installation, analysis and correction. For a future made in Australia, Australia needs workers who have this confidence in each other and in making a future for all. And look, we are resource rich in all sorts of ways, but to paraphrase Eric Hoffman, Australian workers are the lifeblood of the new economy. The tools and skills will always change, but their ingenuity continues to be vital, and that's how we get a future made in Australia.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Longman.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, there's always plenty happening in the great seat of Longman. This Sunday, I'll be attending the Bribie Opa Greek Festival in Warham on beautiful Bribie Island Surfside. There'll be all things Greek there, including Greek dancing, music, Greek food, I'm thinking lamb, and many other events throughout the day. The festivities kick off at 8:30 a.m. and run right through till 4:30 p.m, so please come along and support this fantastic event, and I hope to see you there. Deputy Speaker, the Olympics and Paralympics have now finished, and as the case with all these events, I marvel at what these games bring to communities and individual nations. In a world where there's much turmoil, pain and suffering, the Olympics and Paralympics are very much a place where these troubles, for a short time at least, are forgotten. They are also a time that unites citizens as nations, where they put aside their differences to cheer on their national heroes. I'm so proud of all the athletes that either currently reside in Longman or have a connection to Longman, having spent much of their life there. We had Olympians Ella Connolly, who competed in the women's 4x100 relay, where they achieved 4th place in the final, and she placed 6th in her heat. And Morayfield's Caleb Law, he placed 7th in his individual 200 metres heat and was part of the 4x100 metres relay team that placed 7th in their heat. Paralympians Lakeisha, or Lucky Patterson as she's known, will bring home a silver medal in the women's 400 metre medley, as well as placing 5th in both the 200 metres medley and women's 100 metres freestyle. Brendan Hall won a bronze medal in the 400 metre freestyle final and placed 7th in his 100 metre butterfly heat and 6th in his 100 metre backstraight heat. And Ricky Bitar, who won a bronze medal in the 200 metres medley, came 6th in the 100 metres backstraight and 7th in the 100 metre butterfly final. And a special shout out to head coach of the Paralympic team, Harley Connolly, who coaches out of the Burpengary Aquatic Centre right in Longman. It will be my honour to welcome many of these athletes home next Monday at the Maroochydore Surf Club, where a welcome home and congratulations event is being held for all Sunshine Coast and Moreton Bay athletes. Well done to every athlete, irrespective of your result. Much of the time, the same amount of effort, sacrifice and dedication is invested for those athletes who win a medal and those who don't. So we thank you. We thank you all for your efforts, and rest assured all of Australia is very proud of you. Deputy Speaker, BEPA, which stands for Bribie Island Environmental Protection Association, are a key organisation that helps keep Bribie the piece of paradise that it is. Recently, I was pleased that they received funds through the Federal Volunteers Grant Program to purchase equipment for their turtle tracking program. It's relatively unknown that Bribie Island has a turtle hatchery on it. Sadly, many turtles are lost due to not only natural causes, but humans who unwittingly, through recreational endeavours, contribute to this loss. So, if you're four-wheel driving or camping on Bribie Island, please be responsible and be aware that we share this wonderful piece of Australia with other species. Thank you to BEPA for all you do in raising awareness on Bribie. Well, Deputy Speaker, it was a tough year for the Queensland teams in the NRL this year. The Broncos went from being grand finalists last year to missing the final series altogether. The Titans missed out on the finals, and Queensland lost the State of Origin, which was kind of bittersweet, as I think if Queensland continued to dominate State of Origin like we had, many people could have lost interest and turned off the game. So from being a good for the game point of view, it's good that New South Wales won, but from a Queensland supporters point of view, it definitely was not enjoyable. The two NRL positives for me this year were the great showing by the Dolphins, who in just their second year narrowly missed out on the finals due to, ironically, a single-handed performance by a Queenslander, Kalen Ponga, who plays for the Knights, who defeated them in the last game of the season. So now the entire state of Queensland will be behind the lone survivor in the NRL final series, the Cowboys. In the AFL, the Brisbane Lions will again be contesting the AFL final series and flying the Queensland flag, and will hope to go one better than last year where they narrowly lost the grand final. So go the Cowboys and go the Lions. Queenslander.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Wills.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In 1987, 25-year-old Vicky Cleary was attacked and murdered by her ex-boyfriend in Coburg. Vicky's killer used the defence of provocation, receiving a meagre jail sentence of 3 years and 11 months. This was a death sentence for Vicky, a life sentence for her family, who will forever mourn her loss and have been, and less than 4 years for her killer. After Vicky's death, her brother, Phil Cleary, a champion footballer for the Coburg Football Club and coach, and also a former member for Wills in this place, campaigned for the provocation law to be removed. He was instrumental in its abolition in 2005. And since 2017, Phil has held an annual footy match at Coburg Football Club named the Vicky Cleary Day, where we gather to honour the women lost to men's violence. I recently attended this year's day with Ministers Claire O'Neill, Ministers Vicky Ward and Tim Richardson from the state government. At Vicky Cleary Day, we think of the life of Vicky, of course, what it would have been and what it should have been if she'd lived, but also all of the women who have been lost. Jill Maher, Aya Masawi, Eurydice Dixon, just to name a few in Melbourne's north, all of whom had their lives tragically cut short by violence. And of course we think of the 59 women this year who have been lost to violence in Australia. 59 just this year already. It's simply put, it's a national shame. The advocacy of people like Phil Cleary means we remember women who have been lost while actively trying to work for a better future as well. And of course, as the current member for Wills, I'm very committed to implementing the government's strategy for ending violence against women and children in a generation. That's the best way we can honour the women who have been lost as well. Of course, we know that in response to advocates and the work that they've done, the Prime Minister, the Premiers, the Chief Ministers and National Cabinet agreed on a comprehensive $4.7 billion package that harnesses important opportunities to work together to prevent violence and support legal services. And that package will deliver support for frontline specialists and legal services, responding to gender-based violence, innovative approaches to better identify and respond to high-risk perpetrators to stop violence escalating and address the role that systems and harmful industries play in exacerbating violence. Deputy Speaker, I also know the importance of legal services to women just in my own community, especially women of ethnic background and colour, from non-English speaking background and other migrant backgrounds. There are 160 community legal centres, or CLCs, in Australia. They provide free and localised services to more than 400,000 Australians annually, and are often the first point of call for women escaping gender-based violence and family violence and domestic violence. And I personally know a woman in my electorate, we've met far too many, who she sought help for domestic and family violence. She didn't seek it until her 6-year-old daughter went to school with a bruise on her cheek, and she was referred to a community legal centre and supported in separating from and pursuing an IVO from her ex-husband. I don't want to think about what would have happened if the CLC involved was not there to assist her. And I'm heartened at the efforts that this government has made to fund the new National Access to Justice Partnership, which will see a critical $800 million increase in funding for the legal assistance sector over 5 years, with a focus on uplifting services, responding to gender-based violence. And under this agreement, the Commonwealth will invest $3.9 billion over 5 years as well, providing ongoing funding beyond the 5-year agreement so that the sector has long-term funding certainty. But frankly, Deputy Speaker, women are tired of having to seek justice. Justice is important, but by its very nature, justice happens after the fact, after the pain, after the crime. By the time you need a woman's sanctuary to step in and provide safe haven to a family, by the time a CLC is involved, by the time a bruise is noticed by a teacher or on one of the students' faces, a woman and her children are already hurt, or worse, dead. So women want to live. I think we all want to live in a world where they never need to have services after the fact, after the violence, a world where the violence never happens to begin with. And I think where Phil Cleary's advocacy and work for his sister is so important, because he's putting together programs around teaching young boys and men how to respect women and how to engage respectfully. Entering male-dominated spaces like a sporting club to speak about preventing violence is an extremely important element of preventing violence at its source. And that advocacy continues. Phil tirelessly attends local schools, businesses, sporting clubs to advocate for anti-violence strategies. So I say to Phil, thank you for all your efforts. Obviously, these conversations aren't easy. A lot of victims and family members of victims are part of those conversations at the local school level, at the sporting clubs. But I'm glad they're happening. I'm glad Phil is initiating them and in my local community of Wills, and I want to support him further.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Latrobe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Imagine this, investing everything to starting a vocational education and training business and naming it the Australian College of Business and Trade with a new campus in Officer in my electorate of Latrobe. After meeting every regulatory standard, you're approved for 512 students to make the business viable. You sign a 4-year lease and you decide to have courses when it comes to automotive, and you rent out a mechanical workshop for $6,000 a month. For cookery course, you rent a commercial kitchen for $8,000 a month and rent out the overall campus for $6,000 a month. In total, $20,000 a month, and you also have 6 staffs, and then you have all the other overheads. But then, without any warning, last Friday, the 6th of September, the Albanese Labor Government Department of Employment and Workplace Relations sends a letter to you reducing your capacity. So it was 512. It's gone from 512. It hasn't gone to 400. It hasn't gone to 3. It hasn't even gone to 10. It's gone to 1 student next year. So how on earth is anyone to pay the rent wage? It's absolutely impossible. So they're going to go into liquidation. And this is the same with other vet providers I met yesterday: Franklin International College, Institute of Management and Trade, Atlantic College. It is just a complete schmozzle what is happening to that sector, and the Albanese Labor government must be condemned. They must support international students and those providers. There's so many jobs at stake here in Australia. I'd also like to bring to the House's attention today safely engaging with the water pilot program arranged by a good friend of mine, Harpreet Singh. Water safety is such a huge issue. In my electorate of Latrobe, Harpreet Singh and Gurdwara Sri Guru Nanak Darbar Officer, in collaboration with Cardinia Life, Aligned Leisure and Life Saving Victoria, have recently launched a safety engaging with water pilot program. 35 people have enrolled in the program and over 40 on the waiting list, and it's for men's and women's session. I must say, I was very impressed when I went down to meet the guys swimming there. Can I make the point, Madam Deputy Speaker? If you come from a country such as India, where swimming, you're not born to basically go to school and swim, where in Australia nearly every youngster swims, it's so important as adults we have these programs. I want to thank Harpreet, I want to thank Paula from Aligned Leisure and Andrew Presley from Life Saving Victoria, and I have worked with Harpreet on so many programs in the year. And this is something I call on the state government of Victoria and also the federal Labor government, the Albanese government, to get behind, because sadly too many people drown from our multicultural community. Last year there was 323 drownings in total across Australia, and over the past decade 113 people from China, 109 from UK, 55 from New Zealand, 46 from India. I know we've had Sri Lanka drownings. I've actually been to the wakes in my electorate where I've had the family just devastated that the father and son had drowned. It's just absolutely awful. And swimming lessons And when people go to the beach and swimming between the flags can save lives, it's such a simple thing to do. But sadly, we still have tragedies. Again, in my electoral office on Adler's Day, 4-year-old boy Ali Amazadar tragically drowned. In April 2023, father and son from Narrabeen lost their lives attempting to rescue each other. How many times we heard that happening? And in January, a Melbourne nurse and 2 university students and a tourist from India tragically drowned off the coast of Port Phillip Island, the worst drowning tragedy in Victoria for 2 decades. In April, a father and grandfather, again from my electorate, Clyde North, drowned in the hotel pool in the Gold Coast. So a fantastic occasion, a holiday, and sadly they drowned. So the message is very clear. For the adults who can't swim, there's no embarrassment going to a club and learning how to swim. And also, again, though, they do need that support. Now, I can just encourage members of the government to really push the Albanese Labor government to fund these programs so we're not going to more funerals and more wakes. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Gilmore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, as we head into the warmer months, it's timely to give a special shout-out to our amazing surf life-saving clubs and the hundreds of volunteers that keep our South Coast beaches safe every summer. Stretching along more than 200 kilometres of coastline from Kiama to Churros Head, my electorate of Gilmore is home to 10 surf life-saving clubs, all of which are held in very high regard in their local communities. Not only do our volunteers patrol our beaches, keeping a watchful eye over the thousands of visitors and locals that enjoy our coast each year, they have once again left their mark at the 2024 Australian and World Surf Lifesaving Championships. Mollymook's master surf boat crew smashed the competition, taking home gold at the world titles held on Queensland's Gold Coast last month. What an amazing achievement by long-time clubbies Marty Drysdale, Russell Bartlett, Kevin Whitford, Paul Jones and Paul Newman. Mollymook's dynamic duo dominated on the sand, with Sam Zustovich securing gold in the open male beach flags and Peyton Williams also picking up gold in the open female beach flags. Jake Stewart, Brooks Grivner, Jack Bridges and Jamie Smith grabbed gold in the open male beach relay, while Ashton Neal took home a bronze medal for Mollymook in the open male beach sprint. The success continued when 18-year-old Misha Boniface saw Mollymook on the podium once again, this time at the Youth World Life-Saving Championships. This awesome young competitor claimed 3 gold medals in the beach sprint, ocean woman relay and mixed ocean lifesaver relay, as well as a silver medal in the beach flags and bronze in the female beach relay. Not to be outdone, the brilliant Bateman's Bay Surf Club boatie legends also scooped 2 gold medals at the World Champs in the 160 years male and 180 years female events. Representing Australia, the Kiama Downs IRB team also collected a silver at the World Titles, narrowly pipped by a New Zealand crew. Browlee's Dan Harding made a splash, winning 2 silver medals in the World Pool Rescue Competition. At only 14 years of age, Maruya surf lifesaver Zara Hall achieved a remarkable result, placing 6th in the world against much older competitors in the under-18s female beach flags. What a sensational rising sports star. Representatives from up and down the coast shone on the world stage and helped the Australian team take out the top point score. Off the beach, one of our local surf club members made a big impression on the water, representing Australia at the Paralympic Games in Paris. Browlee Surf Club member Nikki Ayres and her partner Jed Ashwaja claimed Australia's first ever para-rowing gold medal in the PR3 mixed doubles sculls events. What an amazing achievement. It's been a big year for our local surf club members, with local legend Simon Fillery from the Nowra Culburra Surf Club announced as the 2024 Shoalhaven Volunteer Emergency Services Officer of the Year in June. A patrol captain, IRB driver and jet ski operator, Simon has patrolled our beaches for 14 years and dedicated more than 700 hours to keeping beachgoers safe. The accolades keep flowing for Browlee Surf Club, with member Andrew Edmonds awarded the Emergency Services Medal in this year's King's Birthday Honours list. Andrew joined the club as a nipper in 1992 and has gone on to complete hundreds of patrol hours, call-outs, water safety and club maintenance over the years, and is always the first to lend a hand when an emergency unfolds. The former club captain and current secretary, Andrew has won countless awards, plus 2 rescue citations from Surf Life Saving New South Wales. Andy has also been on the Far South Coast Branch Committee for more than 15 years, and he was instrumental in the establishment of the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service out of Moruya. Another volunteer that deserves a huge congratulations is Mollymook Surf Life Saving Club's Mick Crowell, who recently took home the State Awards of Excellence Official of the Year gong. And finally, a special tribute to Mollymook Surf Club member Ivan Johnson, OAM, who has clocked up an astonishing 70 years of continuous patrol service. Ivan started out at Blackhead Beach before moving to Ulladulla in the 1960s. Ivan has held most positions at Mollymook Surf Life Saving Club over the years and remains an active participant on patrols and as the club's historian. I congratulate these incredible community volunteers on their selflessness and commitment on and off the beach and thank them for training, mentoring and inspiring the next generation of surf lifesavers.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Griffith.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. It's easy to feel hopeless about the state of politics at the moment. Like positive change isn't possible. In fact, while you're struggling to pay the bills, pay the rent, pay the mortgage, choosing between feeding your kids or paying those housing costs, I understand if it's easy to give up hope that any sort of positive change is at all possible. But you want to know what the biggest asset of the Labor and Liberal Party is, and their corporate donors. Their biggest asset, the thing they rely on the most, is low expectations. They want you to feel like asking for rent caps is unreasonable and impossible, even though it works around the world. They want to berate you for suggesting that we should build enough public housing for everyone to live in that needs one. They'll tell you it's impossible, even though cities like Vienna, 60% of people live in some form of social housing. They want to tell you that free university education and scrapping student debt is impossible, even though countries like Norway provide free university to everyone in that country by taxing their resource corporations properly. They want you to feel like every time you ask them for more than scraps that you're the radical. Where really the radicals are the ones that suggest that while the big banks are making record profits, it's okay for single parents to be sleeping in their cars. They're the radicals. The radicals are the ones that think it's okay for Coles and Woolworths to make billions of dollars in profits, while people are having to choose between paying for food that night or getting nappy rash cream for their babies. And the reality is all of those things are possible. Rent caps are possible. Building enough public housing is possible. Free university education and TAFE is possible. Bringing dental and mental health into Medicare is possible. All of these things have been done around the world. They are economically and technically possible. The barrier to achieving any of these things is political. Because the reality is that a majority of the country supports rent caps. A majority of the country supports scrapping tax handouts for property investors and investing that money in building public housing. A majority of this country supports establishing a government-owned developer and building enough good quality housing sold and rented at prices people can actually afford, like countries do around the world. The barrier is political. The barrier is that they are relying on the fact that you are giving up hope on the idea that politics can change anything meaningful in our lives. And it's reasonable to feel like that right now because indeed they do change very little and it feels like every year things get worse. But in the 2022 election, we were told it was impossible to win the federal electorate of Griffith, and we did. We were told it was impossible to win Ryan or Brisbane, and we did. And we won because people like you at home got organised, knocked on people's doors, reached out to people and said, you can hope for more. You can hope for dental and mental health into Medicare. You can hope for rent caps. You can hope for a country where we tax the wealth of big corporations and billionaires and we use it to ensure everyone in this country has what they need to live a good life. Indeed, it has been done before, it has been done around the world, but the reality is that the only way we're going to do it is if we get organised. The only way we're going to do it is if we get organised. And Labor and the Liberals are terrified of that concept, that there will be enough people in this country that could hope for more than scraps, that could hope for more than a country where the Commonwealth Bank can make $9 billion in profit in the same year that we're in one of the worst housing crises this country has seen. That can hope for more than a country right now where people are struggling to make ends meet while Coles and Woolworths make billions of dollars in profit. We can hope for more than that, but the only way we're going to win it is if we get organised and push back on the corporate power, Labor and the Liberals, who could spend so much time trying to crush your hope.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Fraser.
Deputy Speaker, can I, Deputy Speaker, start by congratulating the North Cyprus Turkish community of Victoria for having completed an amazing renovation and renewal of their community centre. Last week, I attended an event with hundreds of people with music, dancing, delicious food, a real celebration of culture. And the fact that so many people attended the new community centre shows how important it is to the North Cypriot Turkish community in the west of Melbourne. The new community centre is a modern and beautifully designed building that will be a wonderful place for the community to come together for cultural events, for important days of celebration, and perhaps most importantly, spending time together, catching up to socialise over a meal or a coffee. Can I say well done to the incredibly hard-working committee and to all of the many volunteers who put in such hard work. This project has been years in the making and, like anything of this magnitude, has involved a number of setbacks along the way. But at each setback, the community, the committee and all the volunteers got back to work, and eventually all of their hard work has paid off. The committee has shown incredible determination and commitment. Can I just acknowledge a few people, and of course I apologise in that whenever you highlight a few names, you inevitably miss a number of others. Of course, the Consul General of Turkey in Victoria was at the event, which shows how important this event was to the broader community, Duan Ferhat Usuk. Can I also acknowledge Dr. Lutif Ali, who's the Grants and Program Manager of the North Cyprus Turkish community of Victoria. Can I also acknowledge Candan Ahmet, the President of the North Cyprus Turkish community, and also Emel Hussein, the President of the North Cyprus Turkish Community Centre Victoria Elders Group. And there are many, many others, of course. On the day, a number of certificates were handed out to volunteers who gave so much throughout this process, and also to a number of the builders and tradespeople. A number of the people who contributed to the building managers and project managers, but also a number of the tradies who run their own businesses, gave so much over a long period of time to make sure that this project came in on budget and on time. And of course, we know that that's a very difficult thing to achieve in this environment. It was great to be at the official launch with so many friends of this community, including Natalie Suleiman, who's been a very good friend of this particular community for many, many years, Ingrid Stitt, the Minister for Multiculturalism, and also Sarah Connolly. So can I just once again thank the local North Cyprus Turkish community for inviting me to this very important event. It was wonderful to celebrate with you. Deputy Speaker, can I also say that the Albanese Labor government has delivered a Medicare urgent care clinic in Maribyrnong to give better access to high-quality, free bulk billed healthcare services. The Maribyrnong Medicare urgent care clinic service will be at Edgewater Medical Centre on Edgewater Boulevard, a very accessible part of the community. In the 2024-25 budget, the Albanese government provided $227 million to deliver 29 more Medicare urgent care clinics. This will take the total to 87 across the country. 7 existing state-funded priority primary care centres in Victoria will now transition to the Albanese government's Medicare urgent care clinic network, and this is one of those. I'm thrilled that an urgent care clinic will be opening in my electorate. This will significantly boost the availability of bulk billed healthcare services for people in my community. The Maribyrnong Clinic will help reduce the number of people attending hospital emergency departments for urgent but not life-threatening conditions such as sprains, infections, rashes and cuts. Indeed, more than a third of the presentations at Footscray Hospital's emergency department have been for non-urgent and semi-urgent issues. This is not only highly inconvenient for individuals, but it's a very inefficient use of our scarce hospital and ED resources. The urgent care clinics are a highly effective way of improving access to bulk bill services, particularly for vulnerable people. And this is one of the key underpinnings of our Medicare system. We're already seeing this deliver benefits in our community in Victoria more broadly. More than 40% of presentations to existing urgent care clinics in Victoria have been outside of standard business hours, which means that these clinics are filling an important gap in services. And 1 in 4 of the visits to these clinics have involved patients aged 15 years or younger. So I'm sure that the Maribyrnong Medicare Urgent Care Clinic will form an important link in that network and help vulnerable people in my electorate.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Moncrieff.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Volunteers have a strong presence throughout the Gold Coast community. They are the glue that holds everything together. And there are many members across the House who have been speaking this week on their volunteer awards and what they do to celebrate their contributions across our nation. Volunteers in Moncrieff help out with local sporting teams, they respond to natural disasters and emergencies, and they assist local charities to support some of our most disadvantaged, and particularly during this cost of living crisis that Australians are facing and Gold Coasters are not exempt from. Volunteers and volunteering has never been more important than it is today in our tough times. And last Thursday, it gave me great pleasure, and it was a great privilege, to host the 2024 Moncrieff Community Volunteer Awards at Merrimack State High School on the Gold Coast. And Merrimack State High School is very generous to provide their hall for a second year in a row now in order for me to host the Volunteer Awards. And I want to thank Principal Rachel Cuttajar. She does a fantastic job at Merrimack State High School, but the whole Merrimack team also and the Gold Coast community for the continued support for this event in order to celebrate our wonderful volunteers. And we heard from the high school band, which was a highlight for me, and that was full of grade 7 to year 12 students. So it was a stage band with a mix of grades, and they did a fantastic job with the national anthem and playing some other charts that they provided us with. And the awards provide us with the opportunity to recognise volunteers for their contributions that they make to the Central Gold Coast community. And they simply are an inspiration to our community and our nation, and we are richer for them. They're an inspiration to me also, Deputy Speaker. We're lucky to have so many who do the hard yards in the community and give up their time to provide a helping hand when required, be it to their neighbours, their friends, their colleagues, or simply through charities as well. And this year we had a whopping number of nominations as we celebrated 63 individuals for their efforts to step up and stand out as bright shining stars in our community. And I've added an award since I've become the member for Moncrieff to the awards, and that is the Gladys Moncrieff Award. And that is for that volunteer who stands out, has gone above and beyond in the year to support the Gold Coast community. And previous Gladys Moncrieff Award winners Joan O'Keefe and Bill Wakefield joined me on stage to present the award.
Order. A division has been called for in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division, and the proceedings will resume when the Chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions. I call the member for Moncrieff in continuation.
And this year, that accolade went to Suzanne McDonald, OAM, for all of her dedication and commitment to Southport Surf Life Saving Club. And she exemplifies what it is to be a volunteer and the type of community spirit that is only found on the Gold Coast, in my view. And I could not think of anyone more deserving of this award than Sue. She joined the Southport Surf Life Saving Club in 1986 and has always been an active member. And she's completed 2,230 patrol and community hours on the beach, rarely missing a patrol. Sue often covers the additional voluntary patrols on Christmas Day and Good Friday, so she's absolutely a giver. She has worked tirelessly for the Southport Surf Life Saving Club and is an inspiration for the many younger members of the Southport Surf Life Saving Club and the wider surf life saving community in South Coast. I want to also mention and congratulate the Headspace Southport Youth Advisory Council volunteers who received the 2024 Gladys Moncrieff Youth Award. I'm very proud of the work at Headspace Southport for young people, and this award is presented to a young person or group who show compassion, consideration and service well beyond their years. And the young people on the Headspace Southport Youth Advisory Council are passionate about giving young people a voice and making the needs of young people heard. They volunteer their time to engage with the community's most marginalised and vulnerable young people, and these selfless young people not only give up their time, but also fearlessly share their own experience on their mental health challenges, on bullying, on neurodiversity and physical illness, just to name a few. And their time and their passion for volunteering in the community directly improves the likelihood that young people will be referred to or reach out to Headspace for support. It was so heartwarming to see and celebrate these incredible individuals, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart for their selfless work across the Gold Coast community, particularly in Moncrief on the central Gold Coast, and to the members of the Community Cabinet that were there from SOP, from the Sikh Temple at Nerang, from the Islamic College at Carrara. You are the glue that holds our community together, and I thank you very much.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. When conflict erupts abroad, some Australians feel compelled to depart our shores to join the fighting. Their motivation may be for political, cultural or religious reasons. It could be dual citizenship or family ties, beliefs and values, or the determination to make a difference by serving some greater cause. And in some cases, it's simply a case of taking the opportunity to do something different or exciting far from home. Of course, there is nothing simple about such undertakings, and there are a range of potential ramifications. Going overseas to participate in a conflict is a risky enterprise for many reasons. Firstly, there is the danger of serious injury or loss of life. Tragically, 7 Australians have died while fighting for the Ukraine armed forces in the Russia-Ukraine war. Under the Criminal Code Act 1995, it is not an offence for Australians to join the official armed forces of a foreign country. However, the Act indicates that it is an offence to engage in hostile activities overseas with listed terror organisations such as Hamas or Hezbollah. While it is not illegal to serve with a foreign military, it is crucial to note that this does not mean Australian participants are exempt from other Commonwealth criminal charges that may flow from such participation. Indeed, Australia has obligations under international law to prosecute certain crimes. The Commonwealth Government cautions all Australians who seek to serve with the armed forces of a foreign country to carefully consider their legal obligations and ensure their conduct does not constitute a criminal offence. Dual Australian Israeli citizens who are fighting in the occupied Palestinian territory as part of the Israel Defence Forces should heed this explicit warning. Put simply, if Australians fighting overseas engage in activities that are against international law or some aspect of Australian law, such as war crimes, they can be prosecuted here in Australia. In March this year in this House, I spoke about breaches of international humanitarian law committed by both the IDF and Hamas. I said at the time, a just and enduring peace needs to have redress for the horrific war crimes committed. All who have committed war crimes must be held accountable. Justice must prevail. Now, I'm not suggesting that any or all Australians who have joined the IDF have committed or been complicit in war crimes. However, I'm very concerned, given the IDF's well-publicised and ongoing atrocities against Palestinian civilians, which may directly contravene international humanitarian law, Australians serving in the IDF may be put into situations where their conduct is later investigated. Under international humanitarian law, such collective punishment crimes include the indiscriminate bombing of civilians, the obstruction of basic services, water, medicines, fuel and aid, targeting of hospitals, and the starvation of a civilian population. With the International Criminal Court's application for arrest warrants for war crimes for the Israeli leadership, it is important to raise awareness of the potential consequences for Australians fighting for the IDF in the Israel-Hamas war, including prosecution back home in Australia. The Criminal Code Act 1995 facilitates the Australian Federal Police investigating core international crimes that happen overseas. This includes war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide. The AFP acknowledges that investigating and prosecuting such crimes needs multi-agency and multi-jurisdictional collaboration. The other consequences of participating in conflict overseas concern the long-lasting psychosocial effects of war. There is no doubt that participation in conflict leads to the witnessing of traumatic events. I know many ex-servicemen and women and their challenging battles with PTSD. Experiences on foreign battlefields can return as emotional baggage and even worse. In addition to this, There is undoubtedly a risk of overseas combatants being radicalised into beliefs that are not aligned with our Australian values. Returned Australians may then seek to promulgate their corrupted beliefs when they are back home. This goes to the heart of concerns many in my community have about attacks on our social cohesion and the twin scourges of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Deputy Speaker, we're approaching the one-year anniversary since the beginning of the horrific Israel-Hamas war. Australia continues to provide humanitarian aid. Australia continues to push for a ceasefire and ultimately a peaceful, stable, two-state solution. And I'll continue to engage with those affected in my electorate who are affected by this conflict personally, and obviously I'll continue to speak more broadly on this significant matter, including to those who are directly participating. It has never been more important to uphold Australian values and our multicultural unity. There are people who are deliberately focusing on division and fear, some for base political purposes. So I say again, it's important that we focus on our Australian values and holding our multicultural community strong.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Nichols.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, earlier in my term I did an interview with an ABC sort of youth program called Bubble Tea, and they asked me to describe the Prime Minister in 2 or 3 words, and I said unintended consequences. I was reflecting on this recently in light of where Labor's policy agenda seems to be getting us, and my 3 words now are mugged by reality. Now, my only experience in this place is in opposition, and I can understand the frustration of those who are now in government, who spent all of those 9 years in opposition, and they were developing their agendas. But after a decade, almost a decade of plotting and scheming with the unions, they have fallen for the trap of implementing their agenda rather than governing for the times. And I think that they're misreading the national need. Now, just to give you an idea of where I think we were after the pandemic, and the pandemic was such a challenge. I wasn't in this place at the time, but many businesses in my electorate were extremely thankful to the federal government and the JobKeeper program and the actions led by then Treasurer Frydenberg. And that approach was validated when, and I'll give you a quote from Brendan Coates, Housing and Economic Security Program Director of the Grattan Institute. He described the recovery as a macroeconomic success story, the result of unprecedented monetary policy, record low interest rates and unprecedented fiscal policy. Hundreds of billions of dollars of government spending to keep households and businesses afloat and stimulate economic activity. Now, Deputy Speaker, when we sit in the House of Representatives at the moment, we seem to get this chorus from the now government, you know, $1 billion of coalition debt, nothing to show for it. Well, I think we've got a lot to show for it. The previous government kept the economy going. And in December 2021, the national accounts showed that the Australian economy grew 3.4% since the pandemic, more than the United States, the UK, Canada, Germany, Japan, Italy and France. But what I think we've seen since then, and particularly since the last election, is productivity falling off a cliff. There's a lot of debate in this place as to what's causing the inflation to remain unnecessarily high, and the resultant issues that people are having with the cost of living and mortgage payments. But it's certainly got to do with government spending, and it's certainly got to do with productivity being affected. Now, it's being affected by complex and uncompetitive industrial relation laws, higher input costs, wage inflation unconnected to productivity outcomes, environmental lawfare, and record migration that is untargeted and not addressing the skills gaps, especially in regional Australia. Those are the principles of why it's not working. The examples of why it's not working are in water policy, and I've spoken many times in this place about the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, and attacking industries, private sector industries that actually make us our money, and pushing jobs and money unnecessarily high in the public sector and not looking after the private sector. Now, the Albanese government is uniting the opposition against them. Tanya Constable from Minerals Council of Australia gave some scathing commentary about the government the other night at the Minerals Council dinner.
Part of what she said, we do want cooperation, we don't want conflict, but under these new workplaces, conflict has been brought upon us. It's a deliberate design feature of these laws. Now, conflict in IR laws in the mining industry is not going to deliver us productivity. Innes Willicks, Chief Executive of the National Employer Association, we hope this reset allows the government to focus for the rest of its term on delivering policy certainty in a stable environment that supports business productivity, investment and employment. But I don't see that happening at the moment, Deputy Speaker. I see an attack on productivity, an attack on the businesses that are making us our money, and in my electorate that's agriculture and food manufacturing, but in many other electorates it's mining and the resources sector. I think the pathway to prosperity for Australians is for a strong, competitive private sector supported by the public sector. Not all the focus on the public sector. Of course we need a bureaucracy, of course we need public servants, but productivity and the success of the private sector and our ability to compete overseas is what is going to drive this economy forward and grow the economy. It's not happening at the moment, and I hope the policy settings change so that we can get there. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Every woman has a story of gender bias, whether it's being ignored by a doctor, having their symptoms dismissed, or feeling unable to make decisions about their own body. These stories often reveal prolonged suffering and the painful journey to a proper diagnosis. And that's why next Tuesday I will be hosting a Women's Health Forum alongside the amazing Assistant Minister for Health in my electorate of Corangamite. This free event will be held in Armstrong Creek, and I'm encouraging women across my region to come along and hear about not just the unique challenges facing women in our healthcare system, but also the positive changes that are occurring right now. The Albanese government, the first majority female government in Australian history, is working hard to deliver this positive change and better outcomes by listening to women and acting on their concerns. This is why we've rolled out Australia's first End Gender Bias survey, a survey shedding light on the many unique challenges facing women in our healthcare system, with over 2,800 responses pouring in from women sharing their personal stories. These women shared vivid accounts of pain, trauma and humiliation, painting a stark and troubling picture of women's treatment in the medical system. Deputy Speaker, the evidence is compelling. 2/3 of respondents reported experiencing gender bias or discrimination within the healthcare system. It's simply not good enough. We know that many GPs are doing a very good job, but this is concerning. The most prevalent setting for bias was in general practice, especially during diagnosis, treatment and follow-up care. This survey revealed a disheartening reality that demands more action. Our government is now responding to many of these challenges, and the Assistant Minister for Health is playing a key role in delivering better outcomes for women. In my region, we've opened a new endometriosis and pelvic pain clinic in Belmont, with 22 endo clinics now across the nation. We know an enormous number of women suffer pelvic pain and are often told it's completely normal to shut up and put up with it. We know that in Australia, at least 1 in 9 girls and women suffer from endometriosis, and on average, women wait around 7 years between seeking medical help and receiving a diagnosis. This is unacceptable. And this is why the Albanese Labor government is funding these clinics in every state and territory to improve access to diagnostic and treatment services, to build the primary care workforce to better manage endometriosis and improve access to new information and care pathways. At the forum next Tuesday, the Assistant Minister and I will be joined by Dr. Caitlin Pring from the clinic. Dr. Pring is passionate about women's health, from managing conditions such as PCOS, endometriosis and painful periods, to helping women successfully navigate perimenopause and menopause. perimenopause. We will also have Dr. Natalie Anderson, a psychotherapist from Inner Strength Healthcare. Natalie has been helping women navigate their pelvic health and birth recovery journeys for over 10 years. These women are incredible experts and awesome advocates for better outcomes for women, and I'm so excited that they will be joining us at the forum. So, Deputy Speaker, the Albanese Labor government is committed to prioritising women's health, driven by a strong desire to empower Australian women in every aspect of their lives. Just this morning, our government passed a significant reform through the House of Representatives. Super on paid parental leave is now one step closer to becoming a reality. This reform is part of a broader agenda to address the struggles women face, whether dealing with poverty, the gender pay gap, the gender superannuation gap, marginalisation or insufficient health care. And as part of the broader agenda, we've also announced $48.2 million invested in the National Strategy for the Elimination of Cervical Cancer. We are doing everything we can to support women, and in closing, Deputy Speaker, we're ensuring better health outcomes for women, which strengthens our communities and enriches our society, because when women do well, we all do well. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 4 p.m. on Tuesday, the 8th of October 2024.